All right, welcome back to Judging Bouncing Balls. I'm Jeremy here with Toby. Toby, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. It's been a good day. Again, it feels like it's been way too long since we did this. I think we're gonna have to start doing a second one in the week because it's too much time in between.
Well, agreed. Then you throw in some holiday and a lot of downtime, and I'm like, I need something to do. I mean, I could go do yard work or something crazy, but why not? Why not talk sports?
Yeah, we could be productive, or we could spend our time just talking.
And I'm up for the latter. I am. Gotcha.
Okay, I apparently I'm gonna have to piece that back together, but I lost you for a second. So
That's all right. Part of it.
uh,
Studio's
all right,
down.
studio's down.
Studio's getting repainted, so we're here.
So yeah, tonight we want to talk about quite a few things in regards to the cost of youth sports, parents with youth sports, and the different aspects. But I thought one of the things we could do a little bit is just kind of review some of the feedback that we've gotten online from some of the listeners. Some good stuff around last week's episode in the dual athlete, the multi-sport athlete, and how that's really challenging and how from what I gathered from some of the people online was there is some concern that we voiced about not having high school athletics be kind of the focal point, and why that's a really important thing for the community. What feedback did you get, Toby, from people you talked to?
Well, just that it seems there's a huge disconnect between club and high school, and the road to try to combine them is very difficult. You know, both sides, I think, will tell you that they're willing to listen, but usually they're willing to listen in the fact of, as long as you kind of give me the A plus and give the other sport the B, we can make this happen. And I think that's going to be the tough road to hoe for a long time until people figure out either go one or the other. Because there's, I don't know if you could ever piece together both, you know, as we've seen. And the only true way to do it is just to play high school sports.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was definitely one of the, like I said, the comments that I got were just the concern that really we are moving away um, from high school athletics, and how important that is to the community, how important that is to the player, and those are all things that people I think want to see happen. They want to see the local athlete compete, and that's a really important aspect, but it feels like it's kind of moving away from that. And again, just I understand why it happens. It's just I think it's going to be interesting to see where it goes over the next few years.
Right, right. Especially the higher level athletes moving to club, and the community doesn't support club; they support high school,
Yeah.
and that's going to be the crux of sport. But that takes us into our today's episode
Yes.
of
Good.
how we as parents take this on, not as the athlete or the club or the high school, but our job and our role as a parent to book hotels, drive, throw everything into a weekend, and then Sunday night you get home and you're like, what was that for? I mean,
What just happened?
right. And there's been a lot of great weekends. You know, this past one, as we talked about last podcast, touchdown, was our Indianapolis trip, where it was, it was a rat race down. It was 20 degrees. It was a game canceled. It was a game Sunday, and then all of a sudden you raced home.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the challenge. I mean, it's just one of those items where, yeah, it all kind of feels like a blur. It all happens so quick. It's all packed into that few days. You've got all the sometimes you've got 3-4 games into a sometimes 2-day window, maybe a 3-day window if they include Fridays. And before you know it, you're back home and you're like, man, what just happened? It's hard to even. It's a good thing we record them because we'd probably never remember half of it.
Well, 100%, 100%. And it goes back to, we got an early taste of it with my youngest daughter doing cheerleading. That's like 7, 8 years old, where she joined a local cheer team, and it was 3 times a week. We did some cheers. We did everything in the area. You did Freedom High School, the arena. I think we didn't even get into the Rush Center because they just did the arena, and then we do one at like Schaumburg. And then she was 9, 10 years old, and all of a sudden we're buying plane tickets to Dallas, Orlando, and that's when my eyes really opened up as what are we doing? I mean, we are flying around the country, and it wasn't even me and my wife. It was my wife mostly did it because I couldn't do hair or put a bow
Really?
in. So yeah, odd.
That surprises me.
Right. So she was fine going to Florida. She was, they cheered at Disney twice, and it was. You look at the bill at the end of the year, and you're like, what are we doing? And so now I go to local sports, and I say I'm driving to Indy, and I'm spending 1/3 of what it. So that at least makes me happy, but still trying to figure out why we go places.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I posted on our Facebook page earlier today, kind of about this topic, and it estimated in that article that parents are going to spend in totality throughout the United States around $7 billion, that's with a B, on traveling for youth sports this year. And that really ties into what you're talking about, is this idea of the amount that it goes per person, and it can get pretty costly. I found another article that estimated that it ranges anywhere from about $700 a year that people spend on youth sports as far as travel and other things, all the way up to about $9,000, and that's per kid. And so, having seen what can happen with the different sports that I have our kids in, and I know you've seen it with cheerleading and with, tennis and with soccer, that number is a realistic number. I mean, that covers all the costs of the league and the travel and the hotels and the food and all that stuff. When you go for a full year into whatever sport it is you're doing, if it's a travel sport, inevitably you can rack up costs very quickly. Now there are things that you can do to minimize that, but man, you can rack up a lot of money pretty quickly in youth sports. So I can believe that 7 billion number for everybody.
Yeah, and that's a scary number because you tack on what was the 19.2 billion worth of things we spend on different aspects. I don't know if that's numbers in there, but either way, I mean, it's an ungodly amount of money. Now, one of the problems, and I stated this with some friends, we live in a part of the world where if you take 6 hours and you draw a circle around Green Bay, Wisconsin, and you can go 6 hours, you can't go very far. You can go 2 hours past Minneapolis. You can go to Indianapolis. You get halfway to Detroit. So our 6 hour window is very limited, where if you lived in Indianapolis or you lived in St. Louis, we figure out, I mean, you're touching Dallas. So we live in probably a terrible part of the world for travel also. I mean, we gotta touch 3 hours before we touch anything.
Right.
And no offense, I lived in the UP, but we're not traveling to the UP to play elite soccer. It's just not. I wish. I love Marquette, but we're headed, we went to Des Moines. That was a terrible ride.
It's a long ride. It is a long ride.
So, so we'll head back to St. Louis in June for regionals, and that's a great trip. But, we've been stuck. We joined the team 2.5 years ago. We thought St. Louis was great and how Indy was great and this, but now we've been there 3 times each or whatever, and it's like, are we throwing something else?
Right.
So you start to look at your bang for your buck and where you're spending your money. I mean, how many times we've been to Naperville twice this year in the last 4 months. We're in Schaumburg a couple of times, Rockford, and you start to go, well, what are we spending our money on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing with each one of those trips is they're far enough away that you can't drive it each day, but they're not close enough to avoid like a hotel stay. I mean, you kind of got to stay there and be in, and so that definitely adds to the cost as well. I know one of the things that I like about my younger daughter, who plays in a travel league, but it's pretty tight to our area. We can usually travel down to, like, let's say it's Madison. It's cheaper to just drive down each day rather than get a hotel. And so you can minimize some costs that way, which is, nice. Or maybe you can send with another family and mitigate one of the days. But man, when you start getting into that regional travel, it is, there's just not really a good way around it. and I don't think any of the family is close enough where we want to start shacking up in rooms together.
Well, that's just it. In cheer, my wife had a couple good friends that did, so they would split hotels. They'd split cost of travel. No offense, but if me and you take our daughters on a road trip, it's not going to be like, hey, Macy,
Right.
we're splitting a room.
Right.
Just not happening, And then
Not happening. Yeah.
the whole stay and play debacle still blows my mind. Like, here's your hotel. It would usually be $140 a night, but because it's called a stay and play, it's now $240 a night, and and if you don't have enough rooms covered, they fine you.
Yeah. Yes. So if you're not familiar with the stay and play, those of you that are not, because actually I was not familiar with this until we joined this team. Basically, what it is the tournament that you go to play in has an agreement with a hotel or a group of hotels, and they basically say, hey, we're going to provide all the teams. The teams have to stay there. I think they have to rent at least 10 rooms. I think something like that.
You're right.
And
if you rent,
if you rent the rooms, then you meet the qualification. If you don't meet that, then you're not allowed to play in the tournament. Like that player can't, I've never seen that actually enforced. I'd be kind of curious if that ever does get enforced. But the idea is basically you join the tournament, you have to stay in the hotels. And so then you're kind of pigeonholed into whatever they choose for you. And whatever cost that is, you kind of have to do it. You have to pay the fees to join the tournament, and you got to pay the hotels.
Yeah, and that takes a big chunk out of your budget for the weekend. I mean, you talk Indy, we had probably 3 tanks of gas. You throw in $440 worth of hotel rooms, and then you tack on. We still try to bring some food and drinks, but the team went out and did some axe throwing, which you're not going to miss. You eat out, you're not going to miss. So, and then we sit in the lobby and have a couple beers with the dads, and you never add everything into play because I don't think I want to know the number. Like,
yeah, it adds up quick.
I just take the hotel room. What was the weekend? It was $400. Because if you add it all up, you're like, oh my God, what are we doing? Now we get a break.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, now we get a break for a couple months because our kids are moving into high school, which is nice. And we'll talk about what high schools provide, because I've just learned that this 2 years ago with tennis, which is a completely mind-boggling that they charge me $25 to play a high school sport, and then they take care of everything. Like, I think that's the club model. Hey, $50 and we'll take care of everything.
Right. Yeah, they're probably going to need to get some other outside funding for that to happen, because some of that is our tax dollars at work. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It definitely reduces the amount. The one exception to that, and I'll tell you, if you want to play high school hockey, the one exception to that is high school hockey, because the boys for our high school pay, I think it's a $500 fee to join, and I know the girls is a $500 fee as well. So, but every other sport, like, and this is what I never understand, like football it's like $50 or something. It's like, well, how the hell did football do it and hockey's $500? Like, I get that there's ice time that you have to rent, but there's also, you got to rent stadiums, and, at least for us, we have to rent a stadium because we don't own our own. And I don't know, it just seems odd to me that it's so much higher for hockey, but I think it's just partly because it's not as popular too.
Yeah, that could very well be because they don't provide anything, right? I mean, you provide all the padding yourself because it's all kind of individual based.
No, a lot of that they have. So
Really?
That's included in the fee. Like, my daughter gets a helmet and pads and shin guards and the whole setup, a bag, everything. I mean, they take care of them pretty well, but man, it's costly for sure. I mean, it's not a cheap thing. And I don't know, maybe they don't have as much booster activity either. That could be part of it.
Yeah, but man, you're right though. Football for $50 or 40, whatever it is ridiculously cheap.
Right. Yeah. When you think about all the pads and all the helmets, I mean, helmets are, $100 a piece, and you got pads that are $50, $60 a piece. And I mean, it all adds up pretty quickly. So, and that's just the shoulders and the helmet. And you start throwing in the other pads, the jerseys, I mean, it gets pretty expensive. So the fact that we can do it for $50, I just think part of it is there's more appetite for sponsorships of a football team. And so that offsets a lot of the cost.
Yeah. Admission to games.
And like with basketball, And that's a really good point. They actually get a lot more admissions now. There are admissions into the hockey games, but I just don't think they generate as much revenue.
Yeah. But getting back to, as our kids get older, they will be carpooling, doing some different things. Because I never take into account practice either. You travel the farthest on our club and our team, and then we're right there with a couple of Green Bay kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't look at mileage, I don't look at gas, and I don't look at time. I'd like to think my time has some value, but according to some,
it's debatable.
It's debatable. So and then the hours, I think it'd be interesting to see what kind of hours that youth sports put into a family. Just based on even one parent taking a kid to just, God willing, you carpool, can't do that. And I don't mind it because I actually get to spend time with my daughter because of the busy side of life. It's kind of nice to have that half hour, 3 times a week to chat. But I don't know. I got some stuff I could probably handle otherwise.
Your daughter actually talks to you on the car ride?
Wow. In between putting her earphones in, and usually it's you're driving like a moron. Otherwise, yeah, it's a great conversation.
I'm pretty much in silence on the way there, and then on the way home, depending on how the practice went, I might have some conversation. She might be willing to talk. Otherwise, sometimes it's pretty quiet sometimes.
Do you coach? Do you try to coach like pointers?
That's a really good question. Honestly, normally, no. I ask like how it went or what was the coach focusing on, and then I'll try to say like what I like in support of the coach, like what I think that she could work on. But I'm very honest with my daughters and sons about where I think they can improve. But I also try to do it in the context of what I think the coach would want as well, because I think it's a little problematic if I'm like, hey, you need to work on this, and the coach is like, no, that's stupid. I want you to work on this. So I'm very aware of that fact that I may not always have the same opinion as the coach. So I try to at least give some stuff that I think the coach would support as well. And that can be as simple as just asking the coach like certain things that they think the daughter or son could work on. Because I've definitely asked Sean that before, and just, hey, what is it? And just to make sure I'm on the same page as him. But yeah, I don't try to do a ton of coaching. It's more just, hey, I enjoy watching you play. Or hey, it was cool when I saw this, or if I saw any portion of it, just try to be supportive, I guess. But I don't know. How about you?
No, I try, and then she looks at me like I've got 2 heads. I told her I played some 7th and 8th grade Catholic school soccer, which was more running and then stopping and breathing heavy, maybe a little water, maybe. That's pretty much it. Like soccer wasn't our forte, but and that's kind of one of the podcasts we'll get a couple from now is the parent coaching, because I think that's a fine line too, because it relates to our travel, right? Because you sit around the hotel and there's no kids. Usually the kids are off. Mm-hmm. This team that we're on, like they don't even swim. They're real business-like, which is they're starting to loosen up a little bit and have some fun, but they really kind of stick to the room or anything. So when the dads get together in the lobby, there's always the question of, well, who would you start? Or, what do you think you would do different? I'm like, oh, I got no idea. I usually just name the starting lineup because I'm like, I got no idea. Like, I don't even know the numbers, right? We've struggled with that with our broadcasts. Like, I know what your daughter plays, my daughter plays, like 4 other girls. Like, goalie's 1, I think. But it's the oddest thing. So, I tend to not, because I don't get into that fray because I don't know enough about the sport to really make an impact. And it's there's always beers involved, and that's never good.
Yeah, and it's a really good point too, because I even during the broadcast, I'm always impressed when you rattle off the position numbers, because there's a few times where I'm like, oh, is that which player? It's like it's even hard to see. So I don't feel like I'm ever in a position to be voicing opinions on who should play or not play.
Coach hasn't called you?
No, no. I mean, I'd give him my unsolicited opinion if he ever wanted it, but I don't think he would ever care to know, and I don't blame him.
Not one bit. He's got more years in soccer than me and you, and it's for the better.
For the better. If he ever wants to know, if I ever have some questions on football, maybe I'll give him a call too. American football, I'll give him a call.
American football, yeah. There we go.
Right.
Getting back into travel, so what are your, and there's decisions to be made over the next couple of months for all of our families, but we've now made it to the next step, right? So I complain about St. Louis. I think it's a horrible ride. I think the whole state of Illinois it's boring. So now we're going to fly over it, which is even better. Because if we fly, with our new schedule, it will be 2 weekends where they'll pick for us. But this year it was like Austin, Texas, and Orlando. And that sounds amazing. And everybody in my family is like, wow, that's amazing. We should go. And I'm like, oh.
Oh.
Like,
yeah.
you have more kids. Like, my daughter's old. She's not old, but she's 17, so she ain't going to want anything to do with this. Like, she's going to be like, parents are gone for the weekend. Are you kidding me? I'm staying home.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But you're sitting on younger kids, and it's like, where do you say to your one daughter, like, hey, we're going to Orlando to play at ESPN World of Sports near Disney? But the other kids, sorry.
Guess what, kids? You get to stay at home and watch the broadcast. You're going to love it. It's going to be great.
We bring you some Mickey ears, but it was just way too expensive.
Yeah, that's something that I guess, honestly, we haven't put a lot of thought into. I have thought about the fact of, are we going to be able to go down there as a family? And it actually ties into one of the articles that I read about today, and it's how families now are modifying their schedules, their vacation schedules around wherever it is that they play. So if they, and that's kind of what you're alluding to. If they go down to Florida, well, we're going to just extend it by 2 days on either side, and we're going to have a vacation in Florida. And then, that's going to also then be where we go to play. I don't know, honestly, because, as a teacher, one of the things that's going to be problematic is we get 3 personal days per year. So that's not really an option if it's during school. Now, if it happens to fall around when we have some time off, like a spring break or something like that, that could be advantageous. But I don't anticipate that that's going to be that convenient. And so I really don't know what's going to happen. And I don't see us taking an extended vacation down there. I don't know. I haven't, my wife and I haven't put a ton of thought into it yet in conversation, just because we're not sure exactly what it all entails. But that is definitely going to be a problem because, man, not only that, but then you also start to struggle with, are you spending way too much on one kid versus another kid? Not that it always has to be equal and fair, but it kind of has to be a little.
Yeah.
It's got to be a little bit. You can't be like, hey, we're going to, take this one kid and do all this stuff and you guys get to stay home. Yeah. So, I don't know yet what's going to happen, because this is a big part of it. And when you start to, and we've even talked about moving another kid over to the club in Appleton. So if that's the case and we do that, that means that kid's going to be traveling a lot more too. So I don't know. We'll see how it all shakes out.
God, our dog is barking again.
Hey, that's all right.
Do you have a dog? Do you have a dog?
2.
Ooh, wow. We got one. He's a fancy dog. He's a designer. We didn't go with a rescue thingy. We went all in. Oh. just like, I don't know. Retirement's a word that I just don't know what it means.
My favorite is when people talk about rescue dogs. They're like, "Oh, did you rescue it? Did you jump into a burning building and rescue the dog?" We didn't. We did pick our dogs up from a sketchy place in like southwestern Wisconsin. I mean, when I pulled up, it's all dirt roads. Everything's like kennels out in the middle of a field, and like they're in a dirt environment. It was really interesting. It was sketch. But I went to pick up one dog, and I saw both of them together, and I'm like, I don't know if I can just leave the other one behind. But so I know, and now I regret it. I rue the day that no, they're good dogs. The kids love them, but man, anyways, yeah. So, but yeah,
but you add to it, right? When you leave town.
Exactly. And I was just going to say, when you leave town now, you either have to bring the dogs with, or you got to find somewhere to store the dogs, or you got to have somebody take care of the dogs. And so then therein is another cost. And it's one of the things I never would have thought of before we had dogs. And now that we have them, every time we go on vacation, it's like, well, there's another $300 or $400, because
right.
you got to board them or you got to put them somewhere. And it's like, yeah, it's just another item.
Yeah, and that's where there's no need to put a pen to paper, because it's going to make you throw up. It's going to make you regret kids to a point. But
okay,
well,
that's not true.
My kids regret me. My wife regrets me. I mean, let's be honest. No, but
yeah.
At the end of the day, too, it is the enjoyment. I think I enjoy it. I mean, I had a blast in Indianapolis with the dads. It seemed like there were more dads than moms. It's very interesting.
There were this last one was a lot of dads, and I'm glad you just said that, because I was just going to say, hey, I know we've been kind of complaining about the money the entire time, more so than if you don't understand the youth sports circuit. We want you to understand maybe some of the costs that are in it. But all that being said, and I know you feel this way too, it's a really valuable and like good experience, I think, overall. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Well, right, because you still control kind of the narrative, but we're also on the top team. So a lot of teams like to our level don't do this. They travel in state. They might have one overnight tournament in the Dells like we used to do. So this is something, our own poison. This is something we chose, that our daughters made the team. So, but we accepted this. We agreed to this. But I will say, with more dads in Indy, we went axe throwing, versus if more moms, we might have went to lunch. Just saying. A little more risque.
Hey, let's not get too stereotypical here.
Right. True.
I missed the axe throwing. I will say I was disappointed I didn't get there in time. I missed the axe throwing. That would have been fun. I hear it was very interesting to see, or very exciting, when the axes were missing at first, shooting back at the people. That's always a good time when sharp objects are flying through the air.
There was not a waiver sign, so I figured at some point, if my kid goes down, I was going to own an axe arena, which would have been amazing.
I never agreed to this.
Right. Where am I?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, what else what do you want to talk about in regards to the other aspects of spending money on this? Anything we missed that you want to cover?
The only thing that was very interesting when we were down is more on the we go to these tournaments, we go to these, we have our fields that we maintain, that we pay our dues, and then I know Coach Sean does one amazing job with our fields. Joe cuts them. So we have a large acreage down in Appleton that we get the use of. But we went to Grand Park, and it was very interesting when we were doing our halftime podcast, when one of the dads walked up with one of the 07s and brought up a point of how Grand Park is kind of underwater. And I look at these facilities, and I always thought they just make a killing, because I thought our club could use one. 100 acres, you put in 15 soccer fields, you throw some baseball diamonds, you could have tournaments all the time. But come to find out, like the area that it's in, Westfield, is looking to sell it. They want private equity to take over, because it's actually a tax burden. I think they built it for $70 million. I read they owe 80. It's been around for 5 years. It's finally made money this year, but it costs $6 million to run. So you look at not only, and it's amazing, right? I mean, they have a 300,000 square foot indoor facility that the Colts rent for preseason. They've got the Pacers building. I don't think that's part of it, but you go down there, like, wow, this place must make a killing, because there were teams everywhere.
You would think, yeah.
Even in the summer, then there was 35 soccer fields, and I forget we counted how many baseball diamonds, but this thing is a $6 million hole.
I'm going to put this up on the screen just so the people who are watching can see this, kind of what we're talking about, and it kind of gives you an idea of, if I can bring this picture up, make it a little bigger, it shows you, what it looks like. Yeah, that didn't really help as far as the image. But you can see here, there's, you've got all these baseball diamonds that you have, and then you see the big three indoor courts or soccer fields here. If you can see where my mouse is, and then off to the side of that, you see all these different fields as well. Those are all turf fields. I mean, you're talking, probably with lights, you're probably talking 750 to $1 million a piece for each one of those fields.
And this doesn't include the grass fields all the way to the west, to the left of the picture.
Right.
That's where we played our state regional. So, I mean, you just think this place is just going to just be amazing, and it is, but at a cost. Right.
And, what I was surprised at when we heard about that this place wasn't making money, it's like you've got backers of, the Colts and the Pacers are coming into it. It's like you'd think that they'd be making money on this thing and they'd have enough backers where it's not really a problem. But apparently, to you, like what you said, they're not making money, which, it's just kind of crazy to me.
Well, from what I was told was too, they built this outside of Indianapolis on the north side, up a ways, and then the community, everything built around it. So we stayed at hotels in Noblesville. There's hotels just to the south east of this place that are popping up, restaurants, gas stations. So everybody else is making money off it because of parents that come, because every weekend there's a group of parents that come in with kids, and they take up all the hotels. And I know there's revenue there, but I think I just don't know what the overall plan was, because people are getting rich off it, except for the facility itself.
Right.
And I know they're looking for private money, which I think is great, but everything changes, when you now have a for-profit or must-make profit, things get tighter. All of a sudden you're paying to park. We didn't pay to park.
Right.
Fees go up. Everything changes, and you just hope that these destinations where between there and St. Louis, that if they go too crazy, that just raises more fees. It just raises more money out of the pockets of the people. And I always said, like the NFL, when does the NFL price itself out of the community? And
yeah,
I think they're getting there. And then what is the ceiling for youth sports? I mean, there's always people that are willing to go above, but the average person, how much are they willing to spend on a weekend, and then do that weekend 4 times?
Right. And I think what's really interesting about a lot of this is propped up on the idea, back to our earlier podcast, of, having these showcases, these places where people are willing to pay, I wouldn't say top dollar, but a higher entry fee to have access to the potential of a college coach seeing your son or daughter play, and then that being the catalyst of maybe why you could potentially move on to play at a collegiate level, right? And would you agree that's really what kind of the glue that holds this whole thing together? Because otherwise, it's like, why are you spending lots of extra money to go to this big complex, and play? Other than just for the love of the game. But to your point, it's like, if the fees are so much and it's just for the love of the game, what difference does it make? And so that's where it's really interesting. Like, is this a viable financial model? The only way that they're going to be able to make more money is to charge more for the teams that enter into the complex, and entry fee. And at some point, that may be an area where people are like, no, it's just too much. I'm not willing to do it.
Yeah, I was talking to a good friend who, they housed a Green Bay Glory player. So summer league where the college players come back and they'll play the Red Stars out of Chicago. It's good. It's really good soccer, but it's not professional. They can't get paid. But she was from the Stevens Point area. I think her first name was Abby.
Mm-hmm.
And her dad was telling my friend that she got seen she did a guest play out in Vegas at a tournament. So she had 0 offers, went out there, and all of a sudden came home with offers. So we can do everything we're doing around here, but if you need to all of a sudden make that last jump, or the Adidas camp or Nike camp in Florida, those are week-long things. Now, everything we're doing now doesn't mean anything.
That's exciting.
Right. And we're freshmen and 8th graders, so nobody looks at us. We've talked about that. So
right.
Is it more just playing? I know we're guaranteed so many tournaments for our club that we pay for, and so this is one of them. But could there be more? And this is where we live, so there's no viable options in November except for flying somewhere, because you're not, unless we drive to. I said Nashville because I want to go to Nashville, but that's more my personal reason than playing soccer. But I thought maybe we could hit some warmer weather in Nashville.
Hey, Nashville's a nice place. I didn't know you were such a country fan, but
huge, kind of.
Yeah.
But it's a good time. I've been there. I was there for 4 hours. We drove in, had some fun. We drove out when we were traveling for rugby. It's a different story.
Best 4 hours of your life.
We made the freshman rugby players. We made them sit with the minivans and wait for us. We were just jerks. We went and partied, and then we piled in the van, and we had to make it to Savannah. We didn't make it a mile out of town, and every cop in town was on us. It was really great. But we had freshman drivers that were sober, so we won the battle.
Nice. See, that's smart. That's paying your freshman dues right there.
I don't think they looked at it like that because they probably wanted to enjoy Nashville, but we didn't need anybody stealing the minivans that we rented.
So, you got to explain this to me on the rugby scene because I don't know much about the rugby scene. Do you just have to travel that far because there's so few teams, or is it just kind of inherent that you travel that far because that's just the way rugby is?
So we would play. We were out of Milwaukee, UW-Milwaukee. We'd play Whitewater, Eau Claire, Stout, La Crosse, and then every now and then Madison, and then Marquette. Marquette was our big rival. So everything would be in state. But how this worked was one of the guys on my rugby team, a friend of mine, became president of the student body at UW-Milwaukee. So me and another young man went to the meeting of the student council, and we proposed that we needed some money to take our talents on the road. And my buddy was the president, so he had it all lined up. It was, how much you need? We said 5,000. He hit the gavel. Boom, we had $5,000. Nobody questioned it, and I still question it. I don't know why. So that was just a case of we wanted to go to Savannah because we heard it was the 3rd largest St. Patty's Day party in the country. So we're if we go there, we can play. And we did, but we were there for a week. We enjoyed the whole week. Yeah. Now it cost us a couple $100 each for hotels and things, but the school picked up quite a bit.
And if I remember correctly, didn't you go overseas to play rugby too?
I traveled with a club overseas. I went into Munich for Oktoberfest. We're going to stay away from that topic. But then we flew up to Dublin, and then we met a Milwaukee Rugby Club. And I didn't play with them, but we traveled with them up through Scotland and got stuck there, forgot when our flight was, took a double-decker bus, got out of hand. But we made it home. But, yeah, that was interesting because it was they still had bars where there was men-only clubs, because there were some wives that traveled with us, and then, we were in the back of the bar, and they were mad at the wives because I'm like, oh. But yeah, it was fun. We got to see quite a bit of the countryside.
Interesting.
Some of it I remember.
Well, good. I'm glad you have some memories. I know there's some stories you've got from rugby that I remember a couple of them. It seems like I remember you almost got stuck in a country once.
Well, that's flying into Dublin when me and my buddies got removed from the airplane because they thought it was a bomb threat, and it was just the beer stein we stole from Munich. When they threw the backpack down, the camera went off because we had those little throwaway cameras. So it made a a flash and then the shatter. And I was sitting in, we didn't know, we were, after 3 days in Munich, we were like just tired. So I was in my friend's seat and it was his bag. So when the two cops got there with machine guns to pull me off the airplane, I'll be honest, I ratted. I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, that's him. And my buddy said, what? I'm like, yep, nope, not my seat. And then we had to
Can I go back on the plane?
Right. And then they walked us up the tail of the airplane through everybody, and everybody stared at us the whole time. I mean, it was bad. We were tired,
Wow.
and we just wanted to get off the airplane, and they held us. They held the plane up for like an hour. We didn't make a lot of international friends.
Wow. But they deemed you not to be a threat to national security.
They did. There was 12 guys surrounding us with machine guns at that time. There was no running. Not that I was going to run anyways. I was probably the slowest of the three. But it crossed my mind. If I could get to the embassy, I think in the movies you just run to the embassy and they save you.
That's right.
But I'd have made it 8 feet and got shot, so I didn't even give it a go. There's no need.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's a good time. I'm glad you made it okay.
Appreciate that.
All right, so we've covered the whole travel thing, and yeah, the Westfield thing. You know, if you haven't looked at it, check it out online. It's an interesting story. There's some good articles on it, but it looks like it's probably going to change some ownership hands. Yeah, it's just but this is something that a lot of communities grapple with, is like, do they want to put in something like this? Because to your point, Tommy, there are a lot of people that really do really well with this. It's just not maybe always the firm that starts it, right? Or the community, because it's all the surrounding things, the restaurants, the hotels. Those people do really, really well because there's a huge influx of people coming in to spend money. As we talked about, big industry, $19.2 billion. There's money to be had in this segment. But it's just a matter of can the organization that sets up the tournament make money as well?
Well, plus, and then you look at location, like our club, to build that we'd make it a year and then we'd be bankrupt, right? Because nobody's going to come to Northeast Wisconsin, you know, to play in any major tournaments. You know, we have the state cup, which is probably one of the best tournaments that I see in the state. But we're not going to get teams from. I mean, we played a team from Louisville, we played Indy Premier, and then we played a team from Detroit. So that's a central location for everybody. We're kind of out of the way. So I think a lot of clubs, that's not a viable option. You know, but then you take your 6 hour circle and you find out where you're willing to go, and then now you move it 8 hours, and then you include St. Louis. I think St. Louis. And the farther you get south, I think they have a better handle on it because I think they can go year round.
Right.
And I think that's a huge deal.
And they're central.
Yep.
Yeah, they're centrally located. They're kind of, you go 8 hours out from St. Louis and you can hit a lot of places, especially when you start looking at big cities like that they can fly into very affordably, whereas Green Bay, not as easily, definitely central Wisconsin, not as easily accessible by plane.
Yeah, nobody's chomping at the bit to come to Wausau for a soccer tournament. I mean, it'd be nice.
Yeah, nobody wants to go to Wausau anyway. Oh, I'm just joking. Wausau, you are beautiful people up there. Beautiful people.
Venmo us. We'll talk really nicely to you for $25.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so I wanted to transition to a couple things that we, unless you have anything else to add on that topic. So a couple things that we brought up last week. We actually had thrown around the idea, some stuff for the podcast that we're probably not going to be able to do. After some discussions with some individuals in the know, they kind of advised us against maybe doing anything with high school players, and the reason for that is. It's a really murky area when you start to interview high school players. They're minors, so then you might have to get like parental consent, which is not a problem. It's not like we're going to ask them anything weird. But the other thing that comes into it is if they are a high school athlete, there could be conditions around exploitation. if you can't even really use their name because potentially it could be perceived that you're using them to then promote your podcast. So there's kind of these weird gray areas that we were kind of advised like, hey, you may want to just stay away from that, which makes sense. So we may be altering our plans there a little bit, but we do have some potential guests coming on. We have to finalize some dates, but I mean, could be some really cool guests. Some that are some influencers within the high school athletics realm at a very high level. And so we're hoping to be able to lock those down and kind of follow us for some potential announcements on that. Because if that does happen, we would love to pick the brains of some high individuals to see what they might be able to add for us. So hopefully we'll have some announcements coming soon from there. And then I know, Toby, you said you might have some people that would be interested in interviewing as well, or was I off on that?
No, absolutely no. Some people in the sports world that have different takes on different sports, and I think we've got plenty of topics to discuss, but it's always fun to bring in other outsiders to see their thought process too, and see where they're coming from.
Yeah, so definitely more to come on that, and that's kind of the update on that. We wanted to maybe kind of correct where our path that we were thinking about going as well. And so, hey, we're going to continue to grow. If we do start to see some other areas where we think we could interview them, maybe even in like people who just got out of high school, that is a little bit easier to do than somebody that's actually still in. So yeah, I mean, once I heard that, it made sense, and I'm like, yeah, that's an area that we could definitely explore, is just maybe people that just went through the process and now they're kind of in their first years of college, just to kind of see, was it worth it? So hopefully more to come on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we want to get this podcast going, but we can't ride the back of an high school athlete to ruin that. I mean,
right. Yeah,
yes,
we definitely
they're
don't.
okay at sports, maybe fine. But I mean, if they got a shot, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought of too. I'm like, man, can you imagine if we like ruined some kid's eligibility because we interviewed him on some two-rate podcast? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like you threw it all away for Toby and Jeremy.
For 10 minutes of no fame.
He could have been the greatest athlete ever, but you interviewed Toby and Jeremy. Out.
Right, in a useless interview that meant that they didn't even talk about your sport.
Asked them questions about club sports. So anyways, yeah. So we kind of thought better of it, so we'll see kind of where that goes. But yeah, definitely still some really cool stuff. And if we do get some of these people that we're looking into to have on the podcast, I think it could be really insightful. So hopefully, fingers crossed, more to come on that. So
right, and we'll try to get out there if people have questions to ask. Once we verify one of these happening, do a little interaction with some fans.
Yeah, and that's kind of I know you had mentioned on the first podcast that we eventually would like to go live, and that will be in the works. The system that we use right now does not allow us to go live to social media until we grow a little bit more. And so that's the other aspect, if this does grow and we start to get people that potentially, like we just had the place where we put our podcast out through, they're saying maybe they would potentially be able to do ads. And if we started to generate some revenue that could pay for things like the LLC and some of the costs of actually setting some of these things up to be able to do advertisements, we'll consider that, because, then it's at least not a losing endeavor. We're just kind of breaking even on it. That's something that we could potentially look at. So if there was an area where you wanted to, sponsor the podcast or something like that, that is definitely something that you could potentially consider. But in the meantime, yeah, we're going to continue to produce, this content and kind of go from there. But we'll see how it grows and where we take it.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to end this and come up with a name.
Yeah, we'll come up with a name here for the podcast for this episode and see what we want to do. And I'm gonna, we'll see what we can come up with. Let's put it that way. So, yeah. Anything else?
No, we need everybody to subscribe. We need everybody to listen, and we need some to keep coming with the feedback. It's been great. It's been a topic in everything I do. I went to the Badger game, and my couple buddies talked about it on the way down. So it's kind of fun to
Yeah.
be a part of something that at least generating conversation.
Totally agree. Yeah, and not only if you can rate it and review it, that's awesome. But share it with your friends too. The feedback we've got has been great, even if it's been constructive. So keep sharing it out there onto the interwebs and the social medias, the book faces and stuff like that. And so more people get to see it. We definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot us an email or feedback on social media. Don't forget we're on Twitter at JBB_podcast. And then we also are on Facebook and Instagram. You can search for us under Judging Bouncing Balls. And then you can shoot us an email at judgingbouncingballs at gmail.com. And then we're also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And I just saw we got an invitation for another podcast stream. Maybe we'll have to set that one up.
We'll see.
I don't know
we'll see what they offer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're asking us. Now it's time for us to be like, maybe.
Yeah. How bad you want it, huh? How bad do you want it? So we'll see on that. Maybe we'll be opening that up to a couple other areas. But yeah, it's definitely been fun. So don't hesitate to give us some feedback. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, Tobes. Anything else?
That's it. Another good evening. We'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Well, have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.